Welcome everyone today to our latest webinar on LinkedIn. This is about insights. Have you ever wanted to know what your customers are thinking, or your clients or your business partners? Well, we're going to figure out how to do just that today. I am so excited to have applied anthropologist April Steele with me and Sam LaVoi, a insights researcher. And they are going to be able to answer the questions you've sent in advance to us about how to glean those insights, how to know what your customers are thinking. And this kind of goes beyond surveys and things like that that you might think of in the past. So with that, April, why don't you define what insights are? What does that mean when we say find out some insights about your customer?
Insights really, it's a very broad term and it's used in a lot of different ways. I don't know that there's any one clear definition, but the way that I sort of think of it is it's about, we're doing sort of market research activities all the time, but insights is about uncovering, new things like discoveries and opportunities that maybe you hadn't seen in the data before. And so it's kind of it's really great for instance, front end of innovation, or really thorny sort of like business problems that you're not quite sure where to look for answers. So it's great at uncovering new opportunities and looking for things that you haven't noticed before. So new directions for business strategy, product innovation, how to improve programs and services. A lot of times we think about these things really insularly, and I think it's about kind of expanding the scope of what you're looking at to see, okay, what am I missing, right? And so insights, a lot of people associate insights with probably some innovation or strategy frameworks that folks may have heard of, like design thinking, jobs to be done, blue ocean. All of these kind of start with the premise that we need to go back to the drawing board and redefine the problem from the perspective of our customers, our clients, even our employees, to better understand their needs. So it's like, let's pretend we have forgotten everything we thought we knew about our industry or our business, and let's talk to folks and find out things that we didn't know before. And then we can redefine and solve a new problem that is more in line with what your customers and clients want.
That's super cool. But when you say things like unpack or uncover insights, I'm curious, how do you get this? Like, how do you find that out or gather these insights?
I'll go to Sam for
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, so we have a variety of research tools and methods in our tool belt that we use. And so one of my favorite ones is the in-depth interview. So this is a qualitative approach to unpacking insights. And so we really just get one-on-one time with people and start really broadly to understand the context of their life and the context that behavior or action or feeling is happening within. And so we get really a peek into how are they making meaning of their world, and how is that meaning shaping their actions, their behaviors, their feelings, to give us a really in-depth insight into help informing whatever business challenge we're trying to solve. And one of the beautiful things about these in-depth interviews is that when we get to these discovery aspects, so a lot of time in our life, we're in a very busy world. We don't get time to stop and think much about why are we doing the things we do? How are we feeling about it? What's, underneath there? So a lot of times during these in-depth interviews, our participants are discovering things about themselves that they wouldn't normally have time to think about or even know. And so these are really where we're getting those rich insights to help inform and unpack some of these things happening. And then, of course, we have other methods. We use focus groups and group facilitation a lot, especially for ideating or co-creating new products or services for a client. And then April, I'll let you talk about some of the other methods we use.
Yeah, so as Tab mentioned earlier, I am a business anthropologist. So I studied anthropology, and a lot of people don't really understand the connection between anthropology and business. But essentially, anthropologists use a method called ethnography. And you may or may not have heard this term. It's a very kind of esoteric term. But in the traditional sense, an anthropologist would go live in a community for years and really get to know communities and understand them from a very deep perspective. And so in the business world, we don't necessarily go and live with people, but it's all about observational methods. So the best way to understand what people really do and what they really think is to watch them and observe them in the moment of action rather than asking about it retrospectively. And so we like to incorporate observational methods wherever we can. So these are things like going into factories, riding around with plumbers and pest control technicians, even, going with people as they shop or going into their homes. And asking people, show us how you do this. Show us how you shop for this particular product. Show us how you handle the machinery that you're working with every day. Because again, a lot of the things that we undo are unconscious. They're muscle memory, and we go through these decisions and these activities every day without, as Sam said, thinking very deeply about them. And so observation allows you to really uncover things that other people might not even think to tell you if you're just even in a one-on-one interview. So for instance, I think one good example of this is we did a project for a pet brand company. They made pet products like collars, toys, that kind of stuff. And so we actually went into people's homes and watched how they interacted with their pets and said, show me how you feed your pets, go through that routine, go through the routine of how you would get ready to go on a walk. And we found some just really cool stuff that we never would have seen otherwise. So, from our clients' perspective, they're looking for innovation opportunities. And we were finding all of these things, all of these ways that people were hacking products to like fit their needs that they couldn't find in the pet stores. So one lady, for instance, was like using a kiddie pool as a litter box because she had an elderly cat that had problems keeping her business in the box. And so she had to use a kiddie pool and cut out a little step for her cat to get into. And so just these things that, you never would have seen otherwise can really provide a lot of great ideas, insights, just really awesome discoveries that you wouldn't get.
Yeah, I love the way that you described anthropology and how that fits with business. And the term ethnography is becoming more popular now with human design. And if you think about it, really studying that behavior is becoming more important than ever because people want to reconnect after COVID and they want to learn about each other. And so I can see how that would be really important in both the study of civilization, but also how does business interact with that civilization? So, how do you think clients find this work important? Why is it important for clients to know more about their customers or their business to business partners?
Yeah. Um, well, like you said, there are so many things going on in the world that impact us every day. And I think businesses, even like nonprofits and public institutions, we because of the way businesses are operating, they're set up to think very focused in on their particular product, service, solution, whatever it is. And so you start to get this tunnel vision where you're like looking so closely at your thing, trying to optimize, every little detail. And you forget that this product or service is fitting into this whole universe of people's lives that, don't involve that product. And all of the steps up to them interacting with your product or service, and even after they interact with your products or service, can impact the ways that you're marketing, that you are designing your programs. And so insights really allow us to kind of understand the full picture of people's lived experiences and the everyday realities that kind of shape, as Sam said, how they make meaning of the world, how they make decisions, how they interact with the world and each other. And so ultimately, again, it goes back to that it helps you identify unknown factors or opportunities that you wouldn't that you're not seeing because you're too focused in on maybe the wrong problem or too narrow of a problem. So it's great to help you kind of get outside your box and think about your products in a new way.
That's awesome. from my background working with innovation, sometimes we would do surveys to learn about things, and whether it was internal with workers and employees or leadership teams or externally to learn what our clients wanted to do. And that was more of quantitative research and quantitative data, which I know personalization is super important to companies right now. They want it to be personalized and they use a lot of quantitative data.
Mhm.
But I know, Sam, you've worked on some projects recently in the healthcare sector and different sectors using quantitative and qualitative data. So when we're talking about insights today, we're talking more about the qualitative, that one-on-one piece that answers the why. Could you tell us kind of how those two things are different? When people hear surveys, they might automatically think quantitative. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the way we approach the different research methods here at Epic Pivot is really understanding the right tool for the job. So, what is our research question at hand? What is the business challenge we're looking into? And what methods and instruments are going to best fit that? And so that's how we make that decision. But overall, if we kind of scale back, we're firm believers in that companies should be using both, and that these methods and instruments should be constantly evolving based on new services, what's happening in the overall ecosystem, societal trends. And so quant and qual are really just two ends of a spectrum, and different ways to look at challenges. So a solid strategy are going to include both. And so we do a lot of mixed methods here, which we include qual and quant. But a really easy way that we remember it and kind of explain to clients is that qual methods are really great when you have a lot of questions and you don't really know where to start. You're maybe doing exploratory research, or like I mentioned earlier, you really want to understand your stakeholders' meaning-making process and how they're moving throughout the world. And then quant methods are really great when you already have qual research, you already have a lot of secondary research, and you're just testing for granularity, and you want to test a specific hypothesis, or you want to measure degrees of variation and comparison. So those are some of the ways we make sense and explain the difference between quant and qual.
Yeah, and it's
And April,
not even as simple as like surveys versus interviews. I mean, surveys, I think there's this perception that surveys are strictly quantitative, and that's not true. There's a lot of qualitative work that goes into actually building the survey, but also a lot of survey questions, even if it's A, B, C, D, are still qualitative answers. And so it's a spectrum of to what degree are we able to define and qualify exactly what it is we want to measure. And if you're not really clear, I think that's what people get into. I think that's a particular risk, is jumping to quant without really understanding precisely what it is that you need to measure and how you need to ask that question so that people are answering in a way that you're going to get good data back. And so kind of an analogy that I like to use is like it's sort of like building a house. And so you would never start to build a house without doing the land survey first. And so qualitative is sort of that land survey where you're mapping the landscape, you're looking at the topography, you're pinpointing hazards and opportunities and figuring out kind of the lay of the land, and that kind of thing. And then quant is where somebody would actually come in and start measuring and laying down the foundation and figuring out the architecture and the dimensions of the rooms, right? So they go hand in hand, and ideally they should be informing each other throughout the process. So your qual research is going to help inform and strengthen your quant. And then once you get that quant data back, you're going to find really cool patterns and want to know why you're seeing those patterns. So then you can go back to your customers and say, hey, we noticed that, there's this trend towards XYZ. Tell us more about why you think, whatever the case may be. And so it's really about, like Sam said, just finding the right tool for the job and making sure that you're not leaning too much on one or the other.
So my mind is going back to anthropologists and like hunting and digging through, sifting through ancient civilizations and trying to figure things out, trying to discover something that's been hidden. And
That's
so
exactly.
as you're researching and uncovering these things, what is like the biggest aha moment that you've had of something that you were like, oh my gosh, look what I just uncovered? So do you have a story like that, an example? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the one the one I always go to just because it's like it's such a it's a product category that I had no understanding of before I started working with this client. They make water heaters, and we've been working with them for many, many years now, even before I came on to Epic Pivot. But essentially, they had no innovation department to speak of, and now they're operating. Their innovation has become embedded throughout their entire organization. But it took a long time to get there. And so when we started the research, everybody has a water heater in their home, and so we went to homeowners and we started talking to homeowners like about, how they interact with their water heater, how they interact with hot water, what do they want in a good water heater. Consumers knew nothing about their water heaters. They didn't care about the category. They didn't know even where their water heater was sometimes, or what, much less what brand it was. And if they did know anything, it was because there had been a disaster. Their basement had flooded, something terrible had happened, and they had to pay thousands of dollars to get a new one. And so you have this product category that's invisible until it becomes a negative. And that's really, not what you want to hear as a company. But what we realized, we shifted our focus and we realized the consumers aren't deciding what water heater to buy. They're calling up their plumber, and their plumber is telling them, I think this is what you need, right? And so we started shifting our research to focus more on the plumbers and the installers, because they're the ones actually informing that purchase. And so when we started researching with plumbers, we had a lot of aha moments. Like we did write-arounds, and on a couple visits, we found that they would tell the customer, hey, I need to go call my boss, or I need to go call our distributor to see if we have a part in stock. Just give me a few minutes. They would go out to their truck and get on YouTube and watch a video for for the job that they were about to do in the customer's home. And the reason
Wow.
they did that is because they don't want to feel incompetent. They want to be very, very sure about what they're doing. And so a lot of our work with this company now is around how do we innovate around plumber confidence and making them feel completely confident in what they're recommending to their customers and make their business succeed, because that's going to drive business, right? So I like that example because it
That's
starts
super
off with,
cool. And it
yeah,
sounds like it started out with customers and then it led to plumbers, and then the solutions, have to come back round with an education program where
right,
that may not have
yeah.
even been on their radar. That's so
Right. So
cool.
that's a great point. Like another example is we started innovating outside the water heaters. So we started looking at how can we get them parts sooner. So now they've got a program called Same Day Parts, where the plumbers can be guaranteed that if they need something for this brand of water heater, they're going to have it that same day.
Wow.
And that's critical, right? And then again, if they were just focused on the water heater, they would have never realized all these other opportunities to increase sales.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And I know that particular client, their sales have rocketed up since this happened. They were able to turn those insights into dollars. So
Mhm.
that's really exciting. Sam, do you have a story?
Yeah, so I actually have an insights project to a particular business challenge that was really exciting and a great time to be a part of. So we were working with a healthcare staffing company, and they really wanted to understand what are some of the factors going into hard to fill positions. So as we know, this is an issue across the United States, making sure that we can retain healthcare clinicians, especially in the ER. So when we were, our client had some hypotheses about what are some of the levers they can pull, but what we were actually able to find out is get this really wide view of when they're searching for jobs, why are they searching, what motivates them to begin searching, during each part of the process, what factors are rising to the top of their mind and what factors are they taking into consideration. So we were able to make a decision gate process that mapped out what factors were most important during what part. And so a lot of factors that came out of that, our client wasn't necessarily initially thinking about. So things like shift coverage, how can we offer more flexible shift coverage? in nursing staff retention. So even though this wasn't something that our client directly controlled, how could they make sure that the hospitals they were staffing in were able to keep nurses and reduce turnover? And so one of the interesting things that we found was that pay didn't actually come in until the very end, and it was not as big of a super feature as some of these other factors. So I think this just speaks to how insights can really, let us into people's worlds, let us understand what is most important at what time, what is informing their decisions and actions. And so that was a really fun project to be a part of and to give this view to our client that helped inform, everything from marketing and job postings to process innovation. So
That is so cool. I really like what you said about this is a problem that everybody's facing right now, trying to keep team members from leaving the company, trying to retain and attract really good workers, and it's hard. It's the worst it's been in many, many decades, and um, that's one of the trends we're facing. What are some of the other trends that you're seeing now that companies are using insights to do? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think the talent acquisition thing is that's definitely something I've heard in pretty much most of my client work for the past couple of years. It's a very big issue, and I think a lot of people think of insights as very customer client end user focused. But you can use insights to inform your talent acquisition and retention strategies, right? So a lot of companies are kind of shifting the lens inward and saying, how do we understand what really, really matters to people, and how do we help people want to come to work every day and bring that sense of meaning and purpose into their lives so that they're not miserable at their jobs, right? We're waking up to the fact that there are a lot more important things out there than than the 9 to 5, and that I think COVID really woke us up to what's really important in my life. And so work life balance, I think, has just become much more of a driver for job satisfaction. And so using insights to figure out how to create a better workplace, I think, is probably one of the biggest trends. Um, in terms of the insights industry itself, digital tools are becoming really popular, and it's easier to reach people now more than ever. Everybody can use Zoom now. And so we can do interviews with so many more people than we could ever reach before. And even things like smartphones, and there's so many cool tools out there now where you can actually have participants like film themselves shopping, or film, for instance, like parts of their home. Like if you're interested in kitchen appliances, you can say like, show me your kitchen, or film yourself baking a cake or whatever. And it's like, that's super easy for them to do and so insightful for us. And it opens it up to being able to do that with anyone, anywhere. We don't have to do it, we don't have to travel and all that. So it really makes research so much easier and quicker. And I think just in general, going back to the talent acquisition thing, there's been a really broad shift in the insights world towards more sort of empathetic experiential learning. And so shifting away from like the very heavily moderated focus group or very heavily moderated survey or interview, to really like getting to know people and empathize with them on a deeper level and learn about their worldviews and their lived experiences. And so you're seeing, for instance, a lot more focus on equity, and how do issues of inclusion and marginalization, all of those things impact the ways that we navigate the world. And so even something like the way companies are handling DEI, bringing just a lot, insights can bring a lot more nuance and depth and intentionality to the way that that work actually gets carried out. So it's not just checking a box anymore. It's about really connecting with each other and understanding how to meet people's needs where they are in their lives.
Thank you for that. So as we close out, I am just curious for each of you, why insights? Out of all the things you could do, two highly educated women business people, why did you choose to work in insights?
Hmm. Well, I kind of stumbled into anthropology, um, you know, later in my college career, and it was just like a light bulb went off. I mean, I have always been so curious about the world and so curious about society, and when I found that there was an actual like application for this work outside of academia, I was just like elated. And so I love what I do. I get to talk to people and get to like learn about people's lives every day, and I just can't imagine a more exciting thing.
That's awesome. Sam?
Yeah, I was when April was talking, I also wrote down curiosity. I feel like curiosity has always been kind of a waypoint through my life. And what we get to do is stay curious. We get to work with so many different clients across industries, learn so many new things. And all of that is based in empathy, in people's lived realities. And so that's really humbling. And I'm grateful that, that we get to do this work every day, and also we get to be really creative. So, we get to use these insights in really creative and innovative ways. And I think that can be really rewarding to, have that creative freedom and have that rooted in this like very empathetic curiosity. So it's insights is a great field to be working in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, ladies, for your advice today and for letting us know how insights can work for companies, how they can work for companies working internally with their employees and team members and leadership, or externally with their clients and customers. It sounds like a way to uncover and discover what you didn't even know was there.